They laughed, actually laughed, in a full conference room, at my $5,000 proposal. By the time I walked out, red-faced and shaking, they'd already moved on to the next agenda item. The sound of their chuckles still echoed in my ears as I stumbled back to my cubicle. They didn't know that tiny proposal would later destroy their budget, erase their reputations, and make me $32 million a year. My name is Samantha Holt, and at 34, I thought I understood how corporate America worked. I'd spent 8 years climbing the ladder at Trinex Solutions, a mid-sized enterprise software company that prided itself on innovative thinking, at least according to the motivational posters plastered across our beige walls. That morning started like any other. Coffee at 7:30, emails by 8, and the familiar hum of fluorescent lights that always gave me a slight headache by noon. I was a financial strategy analyst, which meant I spent my days buried in spreadsheets, hunting for patterns that could save or make the company money. It wasn't glamorous, but I was good at it, really good. The thing they don't tell you in business school is that being good isn't always enough. Sometimes it makes you dangerous. For months, I'd been working on something during my lunch breaks and weekends. It started as curiosity. What if we could predict cost overruns before they happened? What if AI could spot the warning signs humans missed? I'd built a prototype using my own laptop, my own time, careful never to touch company resources. The tool was rough around the edges but functional. It could analyze project data and flag potential budget disasters with 87% accuracy. I'd tested it against our last 5 failed projects. It would have saved us $4.2 million. The quarterly strategy meeting was my chance. Every department head got 15 minutes to pitch new initiatives. I'd rehearsed my presentation dozens of times in my bathroom mirror, timing each slide transition, anticipating every possible question. The conference room on the 14th floor always intimidated me. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown, and the mahogany table could seat 20. That day, 12 executives filled the chairs, 11 men and me. I wasn't the only woman at Trinex, but I was the only one in that room. Next up, Samantha Holt from Financial Analysis, announced Richard Brennan, our CEO. He didn't look up from his phone. I stood, my palms slightly damp despite the aggressive air conditioning. The projector clicked on, displaying my first slide, Predictive Cost Analysis Tool, a $5,000 investment in our future. $5,000. That's all I needed. Server space, some API licenses, and 3 months to refine the algorithm. In corporate terms, it was pocket change. We spent more on the executive coffee bar every month. As you can see from these projections, I began, clicking to the next slide. Implementation of this tool could reduce budget overruns by up to 40% in the first year alone. Michael Torres, VP of Operations, leaned back in his chair. It creaked under his weight. Samantha, is this something you've been working on during company time? No, sir. This has been a personal project. I'm simply proposing that Trinex could benefit from a personal project. He exchanged glances with David Park, the CFO, like a hobby. The word stung, but I pressed on. The mathematics are sound. If you look at slide 4, you'll see how the algorithm identified cost triggers in the Morrison account 3 months before. I'm sorry. Richard finally looked up from his phone, a slight smirk playing at his lips. Did you say $5,000 for your hobby project? A chuckle rippled through the room. James Mueller from sales actually snorted. It's a legitimate tool that could save Samantha. Richard's voice carried that particular tone men use when they think they're being patient with an overeager child. We appreciate your enthusiasm, but perhaps you should focus on your actual job responsibilities instead of playing Silicon Valley startup in your spare time. But the data clearly shows. Cute hobby, Michael interrupted, not even trying to hide his grin. Really cute, but this is a strategy meeting, not show and tell. The laughter came then, not subtle, polite chuckles, but genuine, belly-deep laughter. David slapped the table. James shook his head, still chuckling. Even the younger executives, men I'd thought were different, joined in. I stood there, my slides still glowing on the screen behind me, watching 11 grown men laugh at my work. My cheeks burned. My hands trembled as I clicked off the presentation. Thank you for your time, I managed. my voice steady despite the humiliation churning in my stomach. "Oh, come on. Don't be upset," Richard called out as I gathered my laptop. "We're just having a bit of fun. You know we value your contributions to the team." I turned at the door, meeting his eyes. Of course. As I walked back to my cubicle, their laughter followed me down the hall. By the time I reached my desk, they'd already moved on to the next presentation. Just like that, my $5,000 proposal, the tool that would eventually reshape my entire life, had become nothing more than a funny story they'd tell at happy hour. They had no idea what they'd just set in motion. The aftermath was swift and surgical. Within 48 hours, I found myself reassigned to the Compliance Review Department, Corporate Siberia. My new desk sat in the basement, wedged between the server room and the supply closet. No windows, no strategy meetings, just endless regulatory documents to review and file. "It's temporary," Lisa Watkins, my former colleague, whispered during lunch the following week. We sat in the corner of the cafeteria, her voice barely audible over the clatter of trays. "Just keep your head down until they forget about it." But I knew better. This wasn't temporary. This was a corporate burial. My new supervisor, Harold Stein, made it clear on day one. "Your job is simple," he said, dropping a stack of papers on my desk that actually created a small dust cloud. "Review these compliance forms, check for errors, file them, repeat." He paused at the door. "And Samantha, no special projects, no initiatives, just the work assigned. Understood?" I understood perfectly. The days blurred together. 8:30 arrival, form after form after form. Lunch alone at my desk, 5 o'clock departure. The work was mind-numbing, designed to make ambitious employees quit rather than fire them. It was cheaper that way, cleaner. 3 weeks into my exile, Lisa stopped by my desk after everyone else had left. The basement was eerily quiet, except for the hum of servers next door. "They're calling it the laugh," she said, not meeting my eyes. "That's what they call your presentation. Richard even mentioned it at the all-hands meeting as an example of what not to do." She nodded. "He said employees need to stay focused on their core responsibilities, not chase pipe dreams." She finally looked at me. "Samantha, they're trying to force you out. Everyone knows it. Maybe you should start looking." "I can't." The words came out harsher than intended. Lisa didn't know about Mom. Nobody did. The call had come 2 days after my humiliation. Breast cancer, stage 3. The treatment would be aggressive, expensive, and long. Without my health insurance, she'd lose the house trying to pay for it. "I just can't," I repeated, softer this time. Lisa squeezed my shoulder and left without another word. That night, I sat in my studio apartment, laptop open, staring at the code I'd written. The tool that could have saved Trinx millions glowed on my screen, mocking me. I'd poured months of nights and weekends into it, teaching myself machine learning, studying cost analysis patterns, building something I genuinely believed could help. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. "Treatment starts Monday. Don't worry about me. Sweetheart, how's the big presentation?" I hadn't told her. Couldn't tell her. She was so proud of her daughter, the corporate analyst, the first in our family to work in a building with an elevator. How could I explain that I was now filing papers in a basement because I dared to think too big? "It went great," I typed back. They loved it. The lie tasted bitter, but not as bitter as the truth would have been. I closed the laptop and made a decision. They wanted me to quit fine. I'd give them exactly what they expected. A broken, compliant employee, grateful to still have a paycheck. I'd file their forms. I'd stay quiet. I'd disappear into the basement and become invisible. But I wouldn't stop building. Every evening after work, I refined the algorithm. Every weekend, I improved the interface. I used my savings to pay for cloud storage, keeping everything off Trinx's servers. If they wanted to bury me professionally, that was their choice. But they couldn't bury my mind. 6 weeks into my basement tenure, Harold delivered another soul-crushing assignment digitizing 15 years of paper compliance records. "Should keep you busy for a few months," he said with what might have been sympathy or satisfaction. Hard to tell with Harold. I smiled and thanked him. He had no idea he'd just given me access to 15 years of Trinex's financial data, budgets, overruns, project failures, the works. It was a goldmine for testing and refining my algorithm. Late one night, around 11:45, I was deep in code when another email arrived. The sender made me freeze. Richard Brennan. Samantha, hope you're settling into your new role. Just wanted to check in and make sure you understand that Trinex values team players who know their place in the organization. Looking forward to your continued cooperation. RB. Translation, stay in the basement, stay quiet, or else. I read it twice, then deleted it. Message received. Richard. Message absolutely received. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Mom. Feeling okay tonight? The nurses here are wonderful. Love you. I stared at her message, then at Richard's deleted email, then at my code still running on the screen. They thought they'd broken me. They thought the humiliation, the demotion, the isolation would make me crumble and slink away. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I wasn't broken. I was building. And when I was done, they'd remember the laugh for entirely different reasons. The email arrived on a Thursday at 2:17 a.m. I was awake, of course, debugging a particularly stubborn piece of code when my personal inbox chimed. The sender's name made me sit up straight, Marvin Black. I hadn't heard from Marvin in over 2 years. He'd been the VP of product development at Trinex, the only executive who'd ever taken my ideas seriously. Then one day, he was just gone. Pursuing other opportunities, the official email had said. Now I understood why. Samantha. I heard about what happened in the Q3 strategy meeting. Richard called me last month, gloating about putting another ambitious upstart in their place. He mentioned your name, your proposal, and their response. I'm sorry you had to experience that. I left Trinex for similar reasons. I'd pushed for innovation once too often, supported the wrong initiatives, ones that threatened the comfortable status quo. They made my life miserable until I had no choice but to leave. But here's the thing I never stopped building, and from what Richard unwittingly told me, neither have you. I'm reaching out because I see something in your proposal that they're too blind to recognize. If you're interested, I'd like to discuss a potential collaboration. Nothing that would violate your current employment, of course, just 2 former colleagues having coffee. My number is below if you're interested. Best, Marvin. I read the email 3 times before closing my laptop. Trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not with Mom's treatments and my insurance on the line, but something about Marvin's tone, the careful way he'd worded everything, made me curious. We met that Saturday at a small cafe in Brooklyn, far from Trinex's Manhattan territory. Marvin looked older, grayer, but his eyes held a sharpness I remembered. They did the same thing to me, he said without preamble, stirring his black coffee. I proposed a complete overhaul of our product analytics system. Would have cost $50,000 but saved millions in the long run. They laughed me out of the room, then slowly squeezed me out of the company. Why are you telling me this? He leaned forward. Because I've spent the last 2 years building that system anyway. I've got 3 clients using it now, small startups who actually value innovation. But Samantha, what you've built, if it's what I think it is, it's bigger, much bigger. I said nothing, but he must have seen something in my expression. I'm not asking you to share your code or compromise your position at Trinex, he continued, but I am proposing a partnership. I've got startup experience, connections, and capital. You've got the algorithm. Together, we could build something that makes their rejection irrelevant. I can't leave Trinex. The words came out flat, final. I'm not asking you to, not yet. He pulled out a business card. Marvin Black, Managing Partner, Black Box Ventures. What I'm proposing is simple. We form a company. You maintain your role as technical advisor while keeping your day job. Everything stays separate from Trinex, different market focus, different branding. They'd never even know. And when they find out, by then, it won't matter. His smile was sharp. Trust me, Samantha, the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's making them irrelevant. I took the card but made no promises. That night, I researched everything about Marvin's departure from Trinex. The details were scarce, but what I found confirmed his story. He'd been a rising star until he wasn't. Just like me. Mom called while I was reading. Her voice sounded tired but cheerful. How's my corporate warrior? Surviving, I said, which was true enough. Just surviving? That doesn't sound like my daughter. If only she knew. After we hung up, I made a decision. I pulled up Marvin's proposal and began drafting a response. We'd need legal structure, clear separation from anything Trinex could claim, and absolute discretion. But it was possible, more than possible. It was perfect. 3 weeks later, Axion Curve LLC was quietly registered in Delaware. Marvin put up the initial capital, $50,000, 10 times what I'd asked Trinex for. I maintained my basement role at Trinex by day, but my nights transformed. Instead of bitter coding sessions, I had purpose, a partner who understood not just the technology, but the hunger for vindication. "We're not competing with Trinex," Marvin said during one of our late-night strategy sessions over encrypted video chat. "We're creating what they were too afraid to build. Let them keep laughing while we build the future." I split my screen between the compliance form I was supposed to be reviewing and our development environment. In one window, mind-numbing bureaucracy. In the other, revolution in the making. The irony wasn't lost on me. Trinex had created the perfect conditions for my secret project. The basement isolation meant no one checked on me. The mind-numbing work meant I looked appropriately beaten down during the day. The humiliation had taught me to hide my ambitions behind a mask of compliance. "Thank you," I whispered to the empty basement, to Richard Brennan, to everyone who'd laughed. "Thank you for showing me exactly who you are." They'd created their own worst enemy. They just didn't know it yet. The next 6 months became a masterclass in deception. By day, I was the perfect broken employee, arriving at 8:30 sharp, filing compliance forms with mechanical precision, eating lunch alone at my basement desk. I even started wearing the same 3 neutral outfits on rotation, the corporate equivalent of giving up. "You're really settling in well," Harold commented one afternoon, genuine approval in his voice. "Richard will be pleased to hear it." I smiled blandly, just happy to contribute to the team. By night, I was someone else entirely. Marvin and I worked in synchronized obsession, him handling the business infrastructure while I refined the algorithm. We met in person only once a month, always in different locations, always paying cash, paranoid maybe. But Trinex had taught me that corporate warfare required military-level operational security. The breakthrough came at 1:43 a.m. on a Tuesday. I'd been testing the latest iteration against anonymized financial data from various industries when the pattern recognition suddenly clicked. The algorithm didn't just predict cost overruns anymore, it identified the human decisions that caused them. It could trace budget disasters back to specific choices, specific blind spots, specific egos. "Holy shit," I whispered to my empty apartment. Then louder, "Holy shit." I called Marvin immediately. "I need you to see this." "Samantha, do you know what time?" "I found it. The thing that makes us different from every other financial analytics tool on the market. We don't just predict problems. We show exactly who's responsible for them." The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. Then, "Send me everything. Encrypted channels only." By morning, we both knew we had something extraordinary. Not just a tool, but a mirror that reflected corporate incompetence back at itself in devastating detail. "We need to be careful," Marvin warned during our next video call. "This isn't just disruptive, it's threatening. Companies buy tools that make them look smart, not ones that prove they're stupid. Unless," I said slowly, "we position it differently, not as a blame tool, but as an empowerment platform. Help companies identify their hidden stars, the employees whose decisions consistently save money versus those who consistently waste it." "Turn the mirror into a spotlight," Marvin grinned. "I knew partnering with you was the right choice." We spent the next 3 months in stealth mode, building out the platform with obsessive attention to detail. Every line of code was written on my personal equipment. Every business document was drafted on Marvin's systems. We used encrypted communication, VPNs, and enough security measures to make the NSA proud. Trinex would find no fingerprints, no trail leading back to my basement desk. The office, meanwhile, had become even more suffocating. Richard had instituted new innovation guidelines that required all employee initiatives to be pre-approved by senior management. The message was clear: no more surprise proposals, no more thinking outside your assigned box. "It's for the best," Lisa told me during one of our increasingly rare lunch conversations. After what happened with your thing, people are being more careful. I nodded sympathetically. Of course, we can't have employees getting ideas above their station. She missed the sarcasm entirely. Mom's treatment was progressing well, which was the only bright spot in my double life. The insurance covered most costs, and my basement salary handled the rest. She never questioned why I couldn't visit during normal hours, accepting my excuse about important compliance deadlines with touching faith in her daughter's dedication. Then everything shifted. The email went out on a Friday afternoon. Organizational restructuring effective immediately. Richard Brennan was out as CEO, replaced by the board with someone named Elaine Darrow. The official statement cited strategic differences, but the internal rumors painted a different picture. Revenue was down. Innovation was stagnant. Major clients were asking why Trinex's products felt dated compared to nimbler competitors. Maybe things will change now, Lisa said hopefully. I doubted it, but Elaine surprised everyone. Her first all-hands email included this line: I want to hear from every employee. If you have ideas for improvement, no matter how small or unconventional, my door is open. For exactly 3 seconds, I considered it. Then I remembered the laughter, the basement, the careful destruction of my career. No, Trinex had made their choice. But Marvin saw opportunity. This is perfect timing. A new CEO means chaos, distraction, internal focus. They won't be watching the market carefully. We can soft launch without them noticing. He was right. While Trinex turned inward, focused on reorgs and political reshuffling, Axion Curve quietly went live. Our initial target wasn't Trinex's enterprise clients, but the smaller companies they ignored, startups and mid-sized businesses hungry for affordable innovation. The first sign-up came within hours, then 5 more, then 20. By the end of the first week, we had 43 companies testing our platform. I sat in my basement cubicle, reviewing compliance forms with one eye while watching our user dashboard with the other. Each new sign-up felt like a small victory, a tiny vindication. Samantha. Harold's voice made me quickly close the dashboard. There's a senior management meeting on Monday. They want someone from each department to attend. Since you're our most stable employee, I'd like you to represent compliance. I kept my face neutral. Of course, happy to help. As he walked away, I allowed myself a small smile. They wanted me at a senior meeting, the same room where they'd laughed at my proposal. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Monday morning arrived with unusual clarity. I dressed carefully, not the defeated neutrals I'd worn for months, but my charcoal suit from better days, still professional, still appropriate, but with a subtle return to the person I'd been before the basement. The 14th floor conference room hadn't changed. Same mahogany table, same intimidating windows, same smell of leather and ambition, but the faces were different. Elaine Darrow sat where Richard once held court. Her silver hair pulled back severely, eyes scanning each department representative with surgical precision. Thank you all for coming, she began, her voice carrying none of Richard's casual arrogance. As you know, Trinex is at a crossroads. Our market share has dropped 12% in 6 months. Innovation metrics are at an all-time low. The board brought me in to fix this, but I can't do it alone. She paused, making eye contact with each of us. When her gaze reached me, I held it steadily. I've asked each department to send a representative because I want to hear from the trenches. What's broken? What opportunities are we missing? This is not about blame, it's about solutions. The room stayed silent. Old habits die hard, and Richard's culture of fear still lingered in the walls. Anyone? Elaine's tone sharpened slightly. I've reviewed our last 2 years of strategic initiatives. Remarkably few new ideas made it past the proposal stage. Why? More silence. Then, surprising myself, I raised my hand. Yes, Ms. Holt, Samantha Holt, from compliance. A flicker of recognition crossed her face. Ah, yes. You submitted a proposal last year. Something about predictive analytics. The room tensed. Several people who'd been in that infamous meeting shifted uncomfortably. Yes, I said simply. I've been trying to track down the details, but the documentation seems sparse. Would you mind summarizing it for me? This was it, the moment I'd dreamed about during those long basement months. I could embarrass them all, reveal the mockery, demand vindication. Instead, I heard myself speaking with perfect professional calm. It was a proposal for a $5,000 investment in a predictive cost analysis tool. The concept used machine learning to identify budget overrun patterns before they manifested. Initial testing suggested it could reduce project failures by 40%. 5,000. Elaine's eyebrows rose. That's all. Yes, ma'am. And what happened to this proposal? I met Michael Torres's eyes across the table. He was sweating despite the air conditioning. It was declined. On what grounds? I was told to focus on my core responsibilities. Elaine made a note. I see. And did you pursue the idea independently? The room held its breath. This was the moment to destroy them, to reveal Axion Curve, to claim my revenge. Instead, I smiled politely. I continued refining the concept in my personal time. Yes, the mathematics were too compelling to abandon. Do you still have this work? I do. Excellent. I'd like you to resubmit the proposal. This time, I'll personally ensure it receives proper consideration. The meeting continued, but I barely heard the rest. Afterward, as everyone filed out, Michael Torres cornered me by the elevator. What are you playing at? He hissed. I'm not playing anything, I replied calmly. Elaine asked for ideas. I have one. That project, we decided it wasn't right for Trinex. No, Michael, you laughed at it. There's a difference. His face flushed. If you think you can waltz back upstairs because there's new management, I think, I interrupted, that Elaine deserves to make her own assessment, don't you? I left him standing there and returned to my basement desk, within an hour. I'd crafted a new proposal, the same concept, refined with 6 months of additional development, presented with the cold professionalism of someone who'd learned exactly how this game was played. I submitted it directly to Elaine at 4:30 p.m. By 5:15, I had her response, reviewing with great interest. Please prepare a full presentation for Wednesday's executive session. I stared at the email, then at my phone where Axion Curve's dashboard showed we'd just passed 100 active users. The irony was delicious. They wanted my idea now. After exile, humiliation, and systematic career destruction. That night, I called Marvin. They want me to present the tool again. What? I could hear him sitting up. Samantha, no, we're building momentum. We can't risk. I'm not going to give them Axion Curve, I said. I'm going to give them exactly what I proposed a year ago, the $5,000 version, the basic concept they could have had if they hadn't been too arrogant to listen. And when they realize what they missed, I smiled at my reflection in the dark window. That's the beautiful part. They'll implement my year-old idea thinking they're innovative. While we're already 2 generations ahead in the market, they'll celebrate catching up to where I was 12 months ago. Marvin's laugh was low and appreciative. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Too late for them, I said, already planning Wednesday's presentation. Far too late. The proposal I'd resubmitted was word for word, identical to the original, with one addition, a single footnote mentioning that development had continued independently due to initial lack of institutional support. Let them chew on that. Wednesday couldn't come fast enough. The presentation was scheduled for Wednesday. I arrived at 1:55. Same conference room, same mahogany table. But this time I felt different. The basement hadn't broken me. It had forged me into something harder, sharper. Elaine sat at the head of the table, flanked by the usual suspects. Michael Torres avoided eye contact. David Park shuffled papers nervously. Even James Mueller, who'd snorted at my original pitch, seemed subdued. Ms. Holt? Elaine nodded. Please proceed. I opened my laptop, the same one I'd used a year ago. The presentation loaded. Identical slides, identical projections, identical $5,000 ask. The only difference was me. Predictive cost analysis tool, I began, my voice steady. A $5,000 investment in Trinex's future. This time, no one laughed. I walked through the concept methodically, explaining how machine learning could identify budget risks before they manifested, the mathematics I'd refined over countless basement nights, the potential savings, everything they'd mocked 12 months ago. Questions, I asked when I finished. Elaine spoke first. This is remarkably sophisticated for such a modest investment. What's the development timeline? 3 months for basic implementation, 6 for full integration. And you've continued developing this independently? Yes. Why? I let the silence stretch just long enough. Because good ideas don't become bad ones simply because they're initially rejected. Michael shifted in his seat. There might be some concerns about intellectual property. If this was developed while you were a Trinex employee... I've been very careful, I interrupted smoothly. All development occurred on personal time, with personal resources. I have detailed documentation proving this. Of course, Trinex is free to decline the proposal again. I'm simply offering what was requested, innovative solutions to our current challenges. Our challenges? The pronoun tasted bitter, but I forced it out. Elaine studied me for a long moment. I'd like to see a demonstration. I'd anticipated this. Opening a separate laptop, my personal one, I showed them the basic version I'd created a year ago, not Axion Curve's current iteration, which was light years ahead, but the simple proof of concept they could have had for $5,000. Even this basic version made them lean forward. I watched recognition dawn on their faces, not just of what the tool could do, but of what they'd thrown away. This is... Elaine paused, choosing her words carefully. This is exactly what we need. David, I want you to fast-track approval. Michael, clear whatever resources Ms. Holt requires. Actually, I said, closing the laptop, I have some concerns. The room froze. Concerns. Elaine's tone cooled slightly. A year ago, this proposal was met with, let's call it significant resistance. I need assurance that won't happen again. That whoever champions this project won't find themselves mysteriously reassigned to less strategic positions. I wasn't looking at anyone in particular, but Michael's face reddened. Elaine's eyes narrowed. Are you referring to your current position in compliance? I'm referring to organizational patterns that discourage innovation. If Trinex truly wants to change, it needs to protect those who drive that change. What are you proposing? Full autonomy for this project, direct reporting to you, and restoration to a strategic position that allows me to implement this properly. That sounds like a negotiation, Ms. Holt. No, I said calmly. It's a requirement. I've spent a year in the basement because I dared to think differently. If Trinex wants my thinking now, it comes with conditions. The silence was deafening. Then Elaine smiled, sharp and appreciative. Done. You'll report directly to me. Consider yourself restored to the Strategic Innovation Team, effective immediately. But Michael started. But nothing, Elaine cut him off. Ms. Holt identified a solution we desperately need. The fact that we rejected it initially is our failure, not hers. She turned back to me. When can you start implementation? Monday, I said, gathering my things. I'll need the weekend to prepare. What I really needed the weekend for was to ensure Axion Curve's next release would leap even further ahead. They were buying yesterday's innovation while I was already building tomorrow's. As I left, Elaine called out, Ms. Holt, that footnote in your proposal about continued independent development. How far has that development progressed? I turned back, allowing myself the smallest smile. Far enough to know that $5,000 was a bargain. That weekend, Marvin and I worked around the clock. While Trinex celebrated their innovative acquisition, we pushed Axion Curve to version 3.0. Our client base had swelled to 300 companies, including 2 that had recently declined to renew their Trinex contracts. You're playing a dangerous game, Marvin warned during a 3-a.m. coffee break. When they realize what you're doing. They won't, I said. They're too busy congratulating themselves on being forward-thinking. They'll implement my old idea, claim victory, and never realize they're still a year behind. Monday morning, I returned to the 14th floor. My new office had a window, a small victory. The real victory was watching Michael Torres forced to smile and welcome me back to the strategy team. Water under the bridge, he said through gritted teeth. Of course, I replied. Ancient history. But we both knew better. This wasn't forgiveness. This was positioning. They'd wanted my tool, they'd get it. The basic version, the appetizer, while the real feast was being served elsewhere, to companies that understood the value of innovation from the start. The switch had begun. They just didn't know it yet. The implementation at Trinex proceeded exactly as I'd planned. I delivered the basic tool, functional, useful, but deliberately limited. They celebrated each milestone like they'd discovered fire, never realizing they were playing with matches while I held a flamethrower. 3 weeks in, the first crack appeared. Samantha, Elaine called me into her office at 4:20 p.m. on a Tuesday. "I've been hearing interesting things from the market." I sat calmly, hands folded. "Oh, 3 of our clients have mentioned a new analytics platform, something called Axion Curve. Have you heard of it?" "The name sounds vaguely familiar," I said. "Competitive intelligence isn't really my department." She studied me carefully. "No, I suppose it isn't. Still, I'd like you to look into it. If there's competition in this space, we need to understand it." "Of course." That night, Marvin and I had an emergency call. "They're sniffing around," I told him. "Expected," he replied. "We're at 450 clients now. That kind of growth doesn't go unnoticed." "Should we pull back?" "No, we accelerate." The next day, I submitted my research on Axion Curve to Elaine, a carefully crafted report that acknowledged the competitor's existence while understating its capabilities, just enough truth to be credible, not enough to cause panic. "They seem to be targeting smaller companies," I concluded. "Markets Trinex doesn't actively pursue." Elaine relaxed visibly. "Good. Let them have the scraps while we focus on enterprise clients." If only she knew those scraps were generating 7 figures in monthly recurring revenue. The real shock came 2 weeks later. I was in my office, ostensibly working on Trinex's implementation, when Michael Torres burst in without knocking. "You!" he snarled, slamming the door behind him. "I know what you're doing." I minimized my screen calmly. "Working on the project Elaine assigned." "Cut the act." He threw a printed web page on my desk. "Axion Curve LLC, registered in Delaware. Want to guess who the CTO is?" I glanced at the paper without touching it. There it was, my name in black and white. "Interesting," I said. "Interesting. You're competing directly with your employer." "Am I?" I leaned back in my chair. "Show me where Axion Curve has pursued a single Trinex client. Show me where I've used any Trinex resources or intellectual property. Show me where my employment contract prevents me from having side projects." His face purpled. "You presented that tool to us." "I presented a $5,000 proposal that you laughed out of the room. Then I built something entirely different with my own time and money. The tool Trinex is implementing now is exactly what I offered a year ago. Axion Curve is what I built after you rejected it. This is corporate espionage." "This is capitalism," I corrected. "You had the chance to invest in innovation. You chose humiliation instead. Actions have consequences. Michael." He leaned over my desk, trying to intimidate. "When Elaine finds out, she'll what? Fire me for having a side project that doesn't compete with Trinex's enterprise focus. Sue me for building something better after you rejected my proposal. Please, Michael. We both know Trinex's legal team has already reviewed this. If they had a case, I'd be in court, not in this office." He straightened, uncertain now. I was right. Legal had definitely looked into it. The fact that I was still here meant they'd found nothing actionable. "This isn't over," he said finally. "No," I agreed. "It's just beginning." After he left, I called legal myself. Not Trinex's legal, but Axion Curve's. "They know," I said simply. "We're prepared," our lawyer assured me. "Everything's been structured correctly. You're bulletproof." That evening, Elaine summoned me again. Michael sat in her office, smug despite his earlier defeat. "Samantha," Elaine began carefully, "some concerning information has come to my attention." I waited. "It seems you're involved with a competing company." "I'm involved with a company," I agreed. "Whether it competes is debatable. Axion Curve serves small to mid-sized businesses. Trinex focuses on enterprise clients. Different markets, different needs. You don't see any conflict of interest." "I see an employee who presented an idea, had it rejected, and pursued it independently without using company resources. I see that same employee returning to help implement the original proposal when new leadership recognized its value. Where's the conflict? Elaine exchanged glances with Michael. The optics. The optics, I interrupted. Are that Trinex rejected innovation until it became convenient to embrace it? The optics are that employees who think creatively are punished until management changes its mind. Would you prefer I had simply given up after being laughed at, accepted my basement exile quietly? You were reassigned, not exiled, Michael protested. To compliance, in the basement, after presenting a strategic initiative. I turned to Elaine. You asked why Trinex lacks innovation. This is why. But I'm here. Aren't I implementing the exact tool I promised? For the exact price I quoted. What more do you want? Elaine was quiet for a long moment. Then, I want to see what else you've built. I smiled. That would cost considerably more than $5,000. How much more? More than Trinex has ever paid for innovation. But don't worry. You're getting exactly what you asked for. The $5,000 solution to your problems, just like I promised. The meeting ended in stalemate. They couldn't fire me without admitting they'd made a catastrophic error in judgment. They couldn't force me to give them Axion Curve's technology. They could only watch as I implemented their budget version, while my real creation devoured their market share from below. That night, I visited Mom. Her treatment was going well. Her spirits high. You look different, she said, studying my face. Happier. Work's been interesting, I admitted. Good interesting or bad interesting? I thought about it. Both, but mostly good. She squeezed my hand. That's my girl. Show them what you're made of. If only she knew I already was. The Austin Tech Summit was the industry's premier event. 5,000 attendees, every major player, and this year, a special focus on disruptive financial technologies. I hadn't planned to attend until I saw the speaker list. There she was, Elaine Darrow, scheduled to present Trinex's groundbreaking predictive analytics tool. My tool. My $5,000 proposal they'd mocked. Marvin insisted we go. You've earned this moment, he said. I wore a simple black dress, elegant but understated. No power suit needed. My power came from elsewhere now. The convention center buzzed with energy. Conversations about innovation and market disruption flowing like expensive wine. Samantha Holt. I turned to find a reporter from TechCrunch. I understand you're behind Axion Curve. We'd love to interview you about your journey from corporate analyst to founder. After the awards ceremony, I promised. Because that was the real reason I'd come. The Women in Tech Innovation Awards. Marvin had submitted my nomination months ago without telling me. When the finalist announcement arrived, I'd almost declined. Then I saw who was presenting the awards, Elaine Darrow. The ceremony began at 7 p.m. sharp. I sat in the third row, watching Elaine on stage, poised and professional. She spoke about innovation, about supporting female entrepreneurs, about the importance of recognizing talent. Our final award, she announced, goes to a founder who transformed rejection into revolution, who built something extraordinary not in spite of being dismissed, but because of it. She paused, reading the card. I watched her face change as she recognized the name. The top woman to watch in AI goes to Samantha Holt, CEO and founder of Axion Curve. The spotlight found me. I stood slowly, making my way to the stage as applause thundered through the room. Elaine waited at the podium, her smile professional, but her eyes calculating. Congratulations, she said, handing me the award. I took the microphone. Thank you. This recognition means more than you know, especially from someone who understands the value of second chances. Elaine stiffened slightly, but maintained her smile for the cameras. 2 years ago, I continued, addressing the audience, I proposed a $5,000 idea to my employer. It was rejected, laughed at. Actually, I was reassigned to a basement office and told to focus on my real job. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. In the front row, I spotted Michael Torres and David Park, their faces pale. But rejection taught me something valuable. Sometimes the best ideas aren't meant for companies that can't see their worth. Sometimes you have to build your own stage. I looked directly at Elaine. Axion Curve now serves over 2,000 clients globally. Our annual revenue just exceeded $32 million, and it all started with a proposal worth less than most companies spend on coffee. The applause was deafening, but I wasn't finished. To every woman who's been dismissed, diminished, or laughed out of a boardroom, this is for you. Your ideas have value. Your vision matters. And if they can't see it, I held up the award. Build it anyway. I left the stage to a standing ovation. Elaine caught me backstage. That was quite a speech, she said carefully. Just sharing my journey, I replied. Isn't that what these events are for? Samantha, what happened before I arrived at Trinex? Made me who I am today, I finished. I should thank them, really. If they hadn't laughed, I might have stayed. I might have spent years fighting for approval instead of building something that made their approval irrelevant. She studied me for a long moment. We could have been partners. We could have been, I agreed. For $5,000, that opportunity passed. As I walked away, reporters surrounded me. The TechCrunch interview, photos with other founders, conversations about Action Curve's future. Through it all, I kept thinking about that conference room, that laughter, that humiliation that had transformed into fuel. Later that evening, Marvin found me on the convention center balcony, looking out over Austin's skyline. Regrets? He asked. None, I said, meaning it. They gave me the greatest gift possible. They showed me exactly who they were, and more importantly, who I could become. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. Saw your speech online, so proud of you. Sweetheart, Dad would have been too. I smiled, tucking the phone away. Below us, the convention continued, deals being made, futures being shaped. Somewhere in that crowd, Trinex executives were probably huddling, trying to figure out how they'd let $32 million slip through their fingers. The answer was simple. They'd laughed. In business, as in life, you should never laugh at someone's dreams. You never know when those dreams might grow wings and soar right past you, leaving you earthbound and wondering how you missed the chance to fly. My name is Samantha Holt. They laughed at my $5,000 proposal. Now I make $32 million a year. And I'm just getting started. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever faced rejection that became your motivation? I'd love to hear your experiences. Remember, sometimes the best revenge is massive success.